This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reif Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
Glad nothing happened from last time we were on the show. Man, oh man, I am so glad we still get to do this with our audience partner, Dave Mishkin, on the other side. I am Greg Linnelli. It is Power Lunch on Lightning Radio, summer edition. But even though it is the summer, we anticipated some things picking up here. And boy, did they ever. I feel like over the last 24 hours, we saw some moves that were pretty impactful.
And this is unusual, Greg. Yeah. It is not typical to see this kind of trade activity in the week leading up to the draft and free agency. I mean, you may see some, and we can get into certainly the Lightning made a trade, right? They traded the rights of Darren Raddysh to Toronto, and then it was basically a sign and trade. Right. And the Lightning did that with Jake Guentzel a couple of years ago. They acquired the rights to Jake Guentzel. I think it was the 30th of June. It was right before free agency. But to see these sorts of trades happening when they're happening is a little bit unusual. And maybe we can get into why it's happening.
Yeah, maybe we can. I want to throw it out there before we dive in because I'll probably forget, but I know a lot of people have felt like this free agent class isn't a great one, and so maybe teams are trying to get out ahead of that and maybe acquiring people with a year or two left on their contracts or getting to somebody before they hit free agency to make it happen. But I've heard that partner a lot, that this is one of the – and look, I couldn't tell you. It's not the strongest free agent class. So maybe that there is more of a reason to make some of these trades beyond what we're seeing with players who are about to hit free agency. Certainly Darren Raddysh was going to be part of that, and there was some talk about, well, why did the Lightning make this move, trade to Toronto? Couldn't they have gotten more? But I think we want to talk about the mechanics of why it went down the way it did, and then we can get into the contract itself, Raddysh getting the money and the term. And, you know, look, the interesting question, always trading within your division is something that a lot of people will talk about. So kind of throwing everything on there, and we can kind of dissect it. But do you want to talk about the mechanics of that trade first?
Well, look, I wasn't in the room, so I don't know exactly how all this unfolded. But what we do know is the Lightning had Darren Raddysh's rights through basically the end of June. Yeah. Once July 1 occurs, Darren Raddysh would have become an unrestricted free agent once it became clear it wasn't going to re-sign with the Lightning. So there are two sides to this story. There's the Lightning side, and then there's the Toronto side. Why was this deal made? And we can get into, like, why was the return what it was? Why was it a fifth-round pick for a guy who scored over 20 goals last year, right, and got this huge contract? So let's take it from the Toronto side. Why did Toronto acquire the rights to Darren Raddysh? There are two big reasons why Toronto wanted to acquire Raddysh's rights. Number one, they acquired his rights before he became an unrestricted free agent, and it became clear that they were going to sign him, right? So, I mean, kind of the mechanics behind the scenes here, there was enough there that Toronto knew that Raddysh was going to sign with them. But rather than wait until July 1, when other teams might make an offer, they wanted to get him signed before he went to open market. So that's the advantage of acquiring the player's rights. The other part of this is, by acquiring the player's rights, they're basically re-signing him. They're not really re-signing him, but they are re-signing him. In other words, a pending free agent can get up to 8 years if that pending free agent signs with the team that holds his rights. If he goes to market, it's a maximum 7 years. So by making this trade, Toronto was able to offer Raddysh an 8th year. If Raddysh had just gone to free agency July 1, Toronto could have only offered 7 years. So there was an incentive there for Raddysh. I mean, Raddysh got the 8th year, which is important, but Toronto wanted to offer the 8th year. The only way they could do that would be acquiring his rights. So there are two advantages for Toronto. First of all, they get into a bargaining discussion with nobody else, right? They're the ones who are going to negotiate the contract, and they basically get locked in to get the player that they want without any competition, and they offer the 8th year. All right, so from the Lightning's perspective, why did the Lightning make this trade? If you believe that by not making this trade, Darren Raddysh is going to go to free agency, you get nothing. So this notion of like, why do they only get a 5th-round pick? Why are they trading within the division? I mean, it's very possible that had they not traded Raddysh's rights, July 1 comes, Raddysh signs with Toronto, and they don't even get a 5th-round pick. So I actually looked it up because I didn't remember. When Carolina traded Jake Gensel's rights, basically, to the Lightning in June of 2024, the Lightning gave up a 3rd-round pick.
Right.
So you might say, oh, maybe the Lightning could have gotten something better than a 5th-round pick. I think there is a difference, though, between Gensel's pedigree at that point and what Raddysh is working on basically one fantastic year. Guentzel had been a top player in the NHL
for a little bit,
for 7 years, right? So maybe that factored in. Maybe there's another team that was interested too in acquiring Gensel's rights, and the Lightning had to offer a 3rd-round pick. It's not, they weren't going to get a 1st-round pick for Darren Raddysh's rights. Okay, that just wasn't going to happen. They got something for it though, and it may have been that was the best that they could get, because the alternative would have been getting absolutely nothing. But Toronto was willing to give up the 5th-round pick to get the 8th year in the deal and basically get the player locked in. So that's why the deal was made. You only get to this point if you're the Lightning, if you are clear that, first of all, you're not going to be able to re-sign Raddysh because he's interested in testing the market, and maybe he had an idea of what Toronto would offer. And you understand that maybe Toronto is a destination for him. It's where he's from. You know, his mom is recently widowed. She's from the area. I mean, there are certain other factors at play here beyond, I want to go play for the Maple Leafs, which may have been part of it. You know, he's going to be the guy there, their number 1 power play defenseman, certainly. He got the longevity. He probably got more money than what the Lightning would have been able to offer based on kind of what we were projecting. You know, this was a higher end deal. People were like, Toronto overpaid. Well, I mean, we don't know that. If the cap continues to go up, this 8.5 AAV is going to be a smaller percentage of the overall cap. So who knows by year 5 or 6 if it's as much of a pull on the overall cap situation for Toronto. We just don't know. This is what Toronto was willing to pay. They had the money to pay it. They wanted to offer term to the player to secure that player, and it made sense to them. So that's what you get in free agency. You know, every team is looking at things from their own perspective, right? So Toronto felt that this was money well spent, and that's their right, and it's Darren Raddysh's right to accept that money. But I also think, in the contract, but I also think the location mattered based on everything that has gone on in his life the last year without actually having talked to him about it. You know, You can kind of connect the dots here. So if you're the Lightning, you're like, it seems like, first of all, we realize after talking with Raddysh and his agent, we're not going to get him re-signed. It seems like he wants to go to Toronto. Rather than just letting the clock run out and him go to Toronto, let's get something in return. That's why the deal was made.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Morgan O'Reilly, is he not coming back? Or there's
Morgan
talk
O'Reilly?
He's not.
Well, no deal has been made yet.
So that could be part of, too, the urgency to get a guy like Raddysh. You know,
is Riley a UFA, though?
I don't know. I feel like I'm reading conversations that, you know, he's either not going to resign or it is what it is.
No, he's got term left, Greg. I just looked it up.
Okay.
So he's got 4 years left.
So maybe it's more they're looking to deal him because they feel like I've just been reading more of that speculation. So
yeah, that is I'm unclear about that. They have the cap space, though. I mean, right now their cap reflects both Raddysh's contract and Morgan Riley's contract. Now they need to fill spots, right? I mean, they may need to fill some roster spots here, but that's what I'm looking at right now.
The other thing too is there were some things that were discussed that maybe the Lightning had offered 6 and 6,
which is on par with kind of what you were thinking,
what we were saying. So I don't, you know what this also tells me. in addition to maybe Julian ultimately reading the tea leaves, wasn't convinced last year was going to be the standard for Raddysh.
Mm-hmm.
He's also betting on Victor Hedman coming back and having a monster season. And that's kind of the other part of this equation that we need to remember, is that Hedman had an off year for various reasons. But there is more of a track record that Victor Hedman will be an elite offensive player than Darren Raddysh. And if you had to make a choice, and I'm not sure there was one between the two. In other words, could you have kept Raddysh and Hedman? I'm sure there was a way you could have made it work, although the player would have had to given more up, I think, in that scenario than the Lightning. But I think this also, you don't feel as compelled to move on from Raddysh in the year he had if you also don't think that Victor Hedman is going to come back and have a good year. Because that can offset it.
The only pushback I'd give you on that is if, in fact, the Lightning did offer Raddysh 6x6, and he accepted, then that kind of flies in the face of, well, we're good. I think that they wanted to bring back Raddysh. It's kind of the same thing that happened with Stamkos. This was far less.
A lot less with the contract.
Yeah, like there was less acrimony here, certainly. And I mean, also the Stamkos thing was, a year in the making, right? I mean, they could have re-signed Raddysh last July 1. That wasn't going to happen. They could have re-signed him halfway through the year, and they chose not to.
Right.
But it's not that they didn't want the player back. It's not that they didn't think the player could help them. It's that they were unwilling to move on either the dollars or the term, or both.
Yeah.
And once it got to whatever the line in the sand was for Julian about, like, I just can't go over this number, whether that number is the dollar amount or the term amount, then it was like, okay. Like, he's pretty regimented about that. We've seen that, in in the way he kind of holds true to what his belief is about, the contract that he wants to offer.
And by the way, I don't know if he offered 6 and 6.
Right, but that's what's reported.
If that was reported,
we would have heard from him. We'd like to thank Darren Raddysh for his contribution. Like, it would have been a way different.
Yeah, right.
Kind of speech to the media about, or some kind of declaration. Yeah. And I was even seeing reports, like the Lightning camp and Raddish's agent are meeting. And I think that there was an effort made to try and get the player re-signed. But he had a career year, as Julian said halfway through last season. It was a, he's going to get a life-changing deal, which he did. And he had a chance to add, presumably, allegedly, or at least based on reports, more dollars and more term.
And by the way, congratulations to Raddysh.
Congratulations.
I mean, honestly, like, take the switching to the Maple Leafs aside. I mean, you only get so many opportunities to change the course of your life in many ways. And he did. He faced a lot of adversity this year. Remember, he didn't play a ton early on in the year.
No, he didn't.
Obviously, he faces the tragedy throughout the season with his father passing, but he puts that aside and he has the year he has, and he ends up getting paid. And look, that's not the be-all, end-all, but he established himself as a legitimate top 4 defenseman in the eyes of many people, got paid like one, and probably doesn't ever have to worry about finances ever again. So good for him from that perspective. I want to bring these two questions from Chris up because I think they do dovetail a little bit with what we were discussing. His first thing was Toronto wants to move Riley. Apparently has given the Leafs a list of 4 teams he is willing to go to. Chris also says if the rumors about the Bolts signing Karlsson for $8 to $9 million for 2 to 3 years, I just don't understand why you not just give that to Raddysh, who is 7+ years younger. The cap is going up.
So it's the 2 to 3 years. Raddysh wouldn't have accepted a contract for 2 to 3 years. I mean, first of all, we're presuming, like, I don't know why you just don't give that to Raddysh. I mean, we don't know what Julian is thinking. Okay, what we relayed was what was reported, supposedly, what the Lightning offered to Raddysh. So they offered Raddysh a contract that they thought fit what they wanted to offer the player. I mean, that's kind of double talk, right? But I mean, John Carlson is in a different position than Darren Raddysh. They aren't going to offer John Carlson 6 years. As the fan mentioned, Carlson is that much older than Raddysh. But to just say, if they're going to give Carlson this money, why don't you just give Raddysh this money? Mm-hmm. The issue was more money for, let's say, just more money for 6 years or less money for more than 6 years. Again, we don't know. Clearly, the Lightning were not in a position where they said, we're going to offer you 8 times 8.5.
Yes.
That's what we know.
That's what we do know.
Right. So wherever they were, it was below that. The John Carlson signing, they may bump up the money a little bit because they know they're not on the hook for a contract that's going to, be extended beyond a year or two. We'll see. I mean, Carlson himself, John Carlson, is a pending UFA. We'll see where he decides to go.
And he's what, 36, 37?
Yeah, he is an option.
Yeah.
He is an option as a big
bomb of a shot,
right-handed defenseman who can play in the power plays, played in the power play his whole career, and played well for Anaheim.
Yeah.
I mean, Washington didn't have a great year, but Carlson played well for Anaheim after the trade.
Is that
was a part of that team that won around?
Yes. Is that a good fallback? I don't know. But Carlson showed that he really hasn't slowed down a ton, and he does have that big shot from the point. And he's an accomplished defenseman. And I don't want to say he would be almost in the mold of a Shattenkirk when he came in, because I think in some ways different players, but very good offensively.
Yeah.
And Carlson for a year or two, could you do something with him? Yeah, of course you could. Of course you could.
But he's going to want the Lightning. I mean, we're going to have a show next week. We are right now. We're going to be on the air a week from today, which is opening day of free agency. We don't know if anything is going to break when we're on the air or not, but that's the day that we picked. So, the Lightning have room. They may look to make a move in free agency. They may look to make a move in free agency and be unsuccessful in signing a player that they are targeting, or they may say, we like what we have within the organization. So Victor Hedman, you mentioned him. I will mention Destu. So Destu is younger than Raddysh.
Yeah, right. Couple years, right? Couple years.
Yeah, he's 28, and he's a lefty. So it's a different look. It's more like the look the Lightning have had on their power play when Hedman has been running it, and Sergachev when Hedman wasn't running it, a lefty as opposed to a righty in Raddysh. But Destu's got a bomb, too. I mean, when you score, what did he score? 19 goals in 18 playoff games in the ECHL one year.
Yeah.
I don't care what league you're in. If you're scoring a goal per game, and we're not talking about like 4 games, we're talking almost 20 games. You've got some offensive skill. Now he's got a year under his belt. I'm just saying, the Lightning have options, and we'll see what path they decide to take. Would I like to see John Carlson join the Lightning to help their power play and just bring a veteran presence on the blue line?
I think he'd be a good addition. I think he'd be a good addition.
And when I say this, I'm not saying it in terms of the money, which would probably be on the high end, but it would be a low-risk signing because it would be a short-term signing. Of that, I'm fairly certain.
I don't know if I would have a problem with John Carlson joining this team. So if he is signed to a 2-year contract at $8 or $9 million, I'm not going to sit here on our show the next day and say this is an outrageous move. I'm not going to do it. Now, one person they're not going to pursue is Brady Tkachuk. And so Frosty says, we got to one-up the Panthers somehow. And I will tell you, and for those who are just joining us, maybe not a surprising move. On the surface, it felt like, if you're not really following everything that's going on in Ottawa and with the Panthers, that Tkachuk ends up going to the Panthers. And he's reunited with his brother. Yeah. My immediate reaction to that was, man, are they going to be a pain in the butt to play against? Because now you've got the Tkachuk brothers, you've got Bennett, and just the way Florida, I think, plays in general against the Lightning. And you don't make moves necessarily because your biggest rival does, but I wonder if there is a little more at stake there to do something, I don't want to say to address the physicality or the size, but we do know last year the Lightning did bring in Douglas. They did have Sabrin.
And who they have re-signed.
Yes. And so there is maybe a little bit of that. What are they doing over there? I'm wondering how you view that trade.
I don't get into the whole one-up. I think when you get into the one-up, we need to one-up. This team made a move. No, we need to make a move. Like, it's one team within the division.
For sure.
Right? So I think there's some questions with the Panthers, and they're not all, bad questions. I just think there are questions with the Panthers. Are the Panthers, with Barkov back, forgetting Brady for a second, Brady Tkachuk, with Barkov back, are the Panthers going to be closer to the team that we saw 2 years ago? Presumably yes, but we don't know. Barkov missed a whole year. It was a major injury. Where is his game going to be? I think he's still going to be a great player, but is he going to have the same kind of impact on the team as a whole as he had pre-injury? Maybe yes, maybe not as much. The Panthers had a vibe to them when they were winning all those playoff series and, winning cups, and everything fell right for them and they earned what they got. Last year, nothing went right for them. They had injuries. They couldn't, make plays. They, had losing streaks. They missed the playoffs by a significant margin. And to just say, well, that was just 1 year, we're going to snap our fingers and come right back again. Who knows? It doesn't always happen that way.
Right.
So I think those are the questions that need to get answered. Now
they also need a goaltender.
Bobrovsky. Right. Exactly. So he has been a big part of their success in the playoffs. Now, the other guys who have played when Bobrovsky hasn't played, those guys have done pretty well too. And when they were rolling, and I called them the best team in 2025, I don't think anybody was beating them in 2025 in the playoffs. Maybe you can make the same argument in 2024. Nobody did beat them in 2024. 2025, they were like the 2024 team plus whatever. Like, they were just unstoppable to me in 2025. Are we going to see that same team again? So this is what I do think will happen. I think Matthew Tkachuk, who really, since he sustained an injury in the 2023 final, and I'm not sure he's really been healthy since. Like, he's kind of cobbled together some stretches here where he's given them some really good hockey. Remember, like, he kind of got his game in gear through the 2025 playoffs. And even the Florida people were telling us that, he didn't really start looking like himself again until late in the 2025 playoffs. And then he missed a whole bunch of time last year, too. Now, he came back and played the second half of the year. I think having his brother on the team will, he's going to find some jump. I believe that.
Yes.
And I think Brady will bring an energy that, just the excitement of being on this team, right? I think that he will bring a net positive for sure, not just for himself, Brady, but also his brother. But what does this mean for the whole team? We just don't know. They're going to have to go out and show us.
That is true.
You can only learn so much on paper. The Florida Panthers on paper were a really, really good team 2 years ago. They played even better than that, though, which is why, you can't just look at a team on paper and say, this is going to be the champion, or this is going to be the best team in the division or the conference or whatever. I mean, when people looked at Carolina's roster last year, they're like, yeah, this is a good team, but who's Brandon Bussey? Right? Is Nikolai Ehlers going to be able to do what he's done in Winnipeg?
Yeah.
Will Aho be able to lead the team the way he has led the team? Who would have thought Taylor Hall would have had a resurgence like he had? I mean, so you have to go out and show it on the ice. I think this will help both Tkachuks, having them on the same team, playing together. I think it will help both of them. I do think the Panthers for sure will be a more competitive team, let's just say that, than what they showed last year, where they lost more games than they had in several years.
Yeah.
But are they going to be back to the level that they were at 2 years ago? We just don't know.
Head on a swivel when you play them still.
Well,
And
that
I
is
think
true.
That'll
So,
be
yes,
the case. That'll be the case.
They're going to be this just adds to their cachet of
Yes.
keep your head up, right?
Yes. Regular
They're gonna
season
toe
will
the
be
line.
fun.
They're going to continue to toe the line.
That'll be fun.
I always felt Brady, though. Maybe we just didn't see him as much, which is weird because Ottawa was in the division. I didn't feel Brady towed the line as much.
He will
when he was
now
in
because
Ottawa.
he will be emboldened to do that, I think.
Maybe so. Yes.
Well, I think when you play with guys. The other thing, too, and I want to get to a live read here, it was really interesting to hear that the Olympics potentially had some impact on how he liked playing or didn't like playing in Ottawa. And that fact, management had gone to him and wanted him to tone down the talk about, America winning the gold medal in a Canadian, for a Canadian team.
Go ahead, do the read, and then I'll have one final thought, and then we can move on to
enjoy
other
some Reif Rum.
questions.
Of course, we all need to. Smooth, versatile, now pouring at Benchmark International Arena. Order a tropical wave or a lightning mule. Taste why fans are switching. Reif Rum is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask for Reif Rum by name. Go Bolts. Enjoy responsibly. Go ahead, partner.
So we had some discussions in previous shows about Dylan Larkin.
Yeah.
And fans are like, what would it take to get Dylan Larkin? Who would acquire Dylan Larkin? I'm like, look, if Detroit doesn't like what's being offered Dylan Larkin, they don't have to make this trade. The player's under contract. They're going to be like, basically, you're playing. Deal with it. And Dylan Larkin, to this point, has not yet been traded. He may be traded. But I still maintain that the return is going to have to be satisfactory for Detroit to make that trade. And if not, they can just push and be like, we're not making the deal. Ottawa did not have to trade Brady Tkachuk based on his contract. I think he had 2 years left. So it's not like he was a pending UFA, but I'm going to give you exactly where he's at.
And he wasn't making like $10 million a year, was he?
8.2.
He was making.
So he's got this year and one more year. Right. So there was a little less sand in the hourglass for Brady Tkachuk with Ottawa than there is with Larkin in Detroit, but Ottawa could have held on to Brady Tkachuk. They didn't have to trade him. What I said about Dylan Larkin was the reason you would make the trade come hell or high water is the situation kind of has become untenable. That was the word that I used. That may have in fact happened in Ottawa. Like the stuff that you're talking about, they're like, we need to move on. Even though he's our captain, even though he's played well for us,
Yeah.
And he's been healthier than his brother the last couple of years, but he too has had some injury issues. I remember last year at the beginning of the year, he missed some time due to injury. This may have been a situation where Ottawa was like, we could hold on to him at least for another year, right? He's not going to be a UFA for 2 more years, but everything that happened, like there's just too much bad juju here, and let's move on.
Which is
I don't
really
know if that's the
interesting.
case, but
which is really interesting.
it seems
especially
like
your
that
captain.
is more likely to have happened with this Ottawa situation than what's happening in Detroit.
Yeah, that's fair. I also heard people talk about that Brady maybe will be cast better in Florida because he's not a top line player.
I disagree with that.
And they look at more of the
Tkachuk
points.
Is a hell of a player.
I think he's a hell of, but more of, is he an 80, 90 point guy, or is he more of a 50, 60, 70 point guy? You look at his numbers.
He's going to be in their top 6. He's going to play.
He will be in their top 6.
I mean, I don't know if they're both going to play in the power play because they both kind of go to the front of the net. He is also, as a winger, terrific on faceoffs. Yeah. Now, with Barkov back, they don't need that lefty as much. And Barkov takes a lot of power play faceoffs. He takes a lot of penalty kill faceoffs. Reinhardt's also very, very good. He takes both power play and penalty kill faceoffs. But Brady Tkachuk is a really good faceoff guy on Ottawa and with Ottawa. So we'll see. I mean, look, the Panthers gave up, when you look at draft capital, they gave up, 3 first-round picks gave up. In return, they sent 3 first-round picks and a second to Ottawa. One of those first-round picks is their first-round pick from this year, which was a top 10 pick. But they got a player who's now in the prime of his career. And obviously everything that goes with that, reuniting, you said reuniting with his brother. They never actually, other than on national teams,
they've never actually
been teammates.
They're podcasts.
Yeah, they're podcast partners. It'll be a lot easier for them to do the podcast now. They're in the same city.
I think it's a good move for Florida. Where he projects, I think he'll be productive. I don't know where this puts Florida, but I think it is a good move for them. By the way, this is a deep draft, so it's not insignificant in a lot of teams' eyes to have multiple picks within the first round. Just from what you're hearing. Mytho says, hopefully Julian wakes up and does something this offseason and not just getting 36-year-old Carlson. Make a splash. We have $15 million. Let Bjorkstrand walk.
So I will just point out, Mythos, simply because you have the money to spend, you are not obliged to spend it. So what did you say, Greg? There's a feeling that the free agent class is not the strongest.
That's what people keep telling me.
Yeah. I mean, I can't speak to that with any level of expertise.
Yeah.
I would maintain that I think adding John Carlson would help the Lightning.
Right.
So Mythos was kind of like, this is a throwaway. Like, just don't waste the money on this player. If you are not adding, you're not able to add, you choose not to add, it's not the right player to add, it's not like you're wasting the money in reverse. I mean, you could use that money during the season to acquire a player. I mean, how many times have the Lightning had to do like pretzel gymnastics to make a deal at the deadline because they had no room under the cap?
Yeah.
So it's not the worst thing in the world to have room under the cap. They're going to construct the team that they want to construct. And I maintain many of the players are under contract that you would need to fill a roster, basically. Sure. We understand that Bjorkstrand's a UFA, Perry's a pending UFA, Mitchell Chafee's a pending UFA. I mean, they have some pending UFAs. Declan Carlisle's a pending Group 6 UFA. They may not end up keeping him. We'll see. But most of the players on last year's team are under contract. And I think that they liked last year's team. Now, we do have an opening on Power Play 1 for a big shot defenseman. Will it be Victor Hedman coming back into that role? Will it be Destu? Will it be somebody else? Will it be a free agent? Will they make a trade? You could make a trade. That's what teams are doing.
Yeah, and I don't know what the Lightning are willing to give up. That's the other thing, too.
Right.
I've mentioned this to you throughout the year, and I want to get to some more questions. A player that I think would fit really well within the Lightning's culture because he's still playing at a very high level. He's a playoff performer. He does a lot of things. He's almost at this point Brandon Hagel light in his career is Brian Rust. He is a guy who has a ton of experience. He can score 5-on-5. His issue is a little durability at times, but that's a team, meaning Pittsburgh, that has a couple of guys like Rickard Rakell or Brian Rust potentially that they would move. I don't know what the Penguins would want in return. I don't know what the Lightning would be willing to give up, but I've seen some names being thrown around. Like Frosty here says, we need either Tuck, Larkin, or Werenski.
Now, all right. So
those...
FOMO, FOMO, right? I have kids, so oh my gosh, my friends, I have to do this. FOMO, fear of missing out. Just because these other teams are making deals doesn't mean the Lightning have to make a bunch of deals.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they have to go out and get, a player who may or may not be available. We don't even know if Zach Werenski's going to be available. He's having discussions with Columbus about, I think, his next contract.
Yeah.
So, look, it's good that Julien Brisebois does not suffer from FOMO. Okay. I'm confident saying that. Right. He builds the team that he thinks fits the ideal of the team they want to build. Lest me neglect pointing this out, Greg. We spent a whole show talking about, will Sam O'Reilly be on the NHL roster next year? Will Benjamin Rotiainen, I'm going to figure out how to say his name, will he be on the NHL roster next year? What's going to happen with these guys? I mean, they may come in and make an impact. I don't know that Julien is banking on that, but I think he feels good about having them in the organization.
Where's
they're
Connor
going to be
Geekie?
able to make an impact
Yeah.
sooner rather than later. And then you have players like Connor Geekie, Dominic James, Gage Gonsalves, players within your system that are continuing to grow as young players. So I'm not going to tell the fans to tap the brakes. I mean, look, this is what fans do. We love the emotion from fans, but I think you want the person at the rudder not to be knee-jerk and not say, oh, my gosh, the Panthers got this player, and oh, my gosh, Buffalo got a top 4 pick, and oh, my gosh, these other teams, Toronto now has the number 1 overall pick, and they got Darren Raddysh. We have to do something. No, that's not the way general managers who have success usually are operating. They can be bold without being reactive to what else is happening. Be glad, Lightning fans, that Julien Brisebois is not one of those people.
Agreed. You can watch the Bolts of the future as the Lightning's top young prospects lace up for their annual development camp 3-on-3 tournament.
Speaking of Sam O'Reilly.
Yeah, presented by Florida Blue. Dave Randorf and Brian Engblom, along with Gabby Shirley, will call the action live from the TGH Iceplex in Brandon. You can watch the tournament on July 2nd and 3rd in the Lightning app or on the Spot Tampa Bay Channel 66.
Very nice.
We also had some other moves that were made. We can get into those as well. I want to get to, we'll call it, however you want to pronounce that name, at Vasseria. We need to think of re-signing Kucherov, too. And of course,
so
I'm sure
he is eligible to be re-signed on July 1. I am confident, and I'll use that word, I'm confident the Lightning are going to get him re-signed.
Yes, that would be a major priority. Nemec was traded.
Shimon Nemec,
Devils.
yeah.
Yeah, was dealt.
Former number 2 overall pick.
Yeah. And I guess there was some belief with the Devils that he was asking for Hughes-like money. Mm-hmm. They're not going to do that. They do have, I think, would you say a plethora of offensive-type defensemen there? Maybe they could afford the opportunity.
Well, they have Luke Hughes.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Dougie Hamilton is, we'll just say, long in the tooth. Is he still under contract? I mean, I haven't really looked at New Jersey that carefully, but I'll look at their decor.
Bo Byram, Jordan Greenway go to Chicago. Now, that was one that was interesting because we both like Bo Byram a lot. And I guess the thinking there in Buffalo was that he wanted increased minutes.
He
UFA wasn't going to get it, right?
After this year.
Yeah.
Well, and he's a pending UFA. Not this year, but a year from now.
Yes.
So I will just say this up front. I don't know who the Sabres are going to take with the 4th overall pick. I do not. So I saw a lot of like, oh my gosh, Chicago got fleeced. What are they doing? This, that, and the other thing. Byram is a terrific defenseman.
Yeah.
You are getting a proven top flight NHL defenseman.
Who's young.
I understand the rest of their team has not taken a step forward.
Yeah.
They have Bedard. They have Frank Nazar. Like, they have some young players that, let's just say, if they aren't projected to be superstars like Bedard, are promising young players. Bo Byram will make their team better.
Yeah. Flat
out. Okay? And if you're going to look at it from, well, what about the pick Buffalo's going to get? Byram was a number 4 overall pick. And the Sabres, I think, would do well if whoever they take turns out to be the equivalent in value of Bo Byram, okay? So I think the Sabres made this move maybe thinking we may not be able to re-sign Byram. So let's get this top 5 pick. Like, that makes sense. They also got Louis Crevier, who's not, he's a solid younger defenseman, big right-handed defenseman. Okay. He's not Bo Byram, though. They also traded Jordan Greenway, who played pretty well for them, Buffalo to Chicago. Right. Played pretty well for them in the playoffs. But the key to this deal was Byram, with his contract, going to Chicago for the number 4 overall pick. They also got, I think, a second-round pick in the deal. So when you get into the top 5, you have a pretty good idea of, may not know exactly the player you're going to get, but you know the value of the projected player. But it's still projected. And there's a more uncertainty with a draft pick, even if it's a top 4 draft pick, than with a proven player. and I think you and I are in agreement, Byram is an outstanding defenseman and part of a defense core on Buffalo that helped the Sabres do what they did last year. So now you are pulling this guy out. Who is going to replace him? He's in their top 4. You had Samuelson, Dahlin, Power, and him. That was a formidable top 4.
Mm-hmm.
So long term, it may actually work out quite well for the Sabres. But as short term as next year, what are they going to do? Who are they going to find to take Byram's minutes?
Right.
Everything that he did for them. And he was also, after having a lot of concussion problems earlier in his career, he's proven to be extremely durable the last couple of years. If I'm not mistaken, he played every game but one last year. We talked about
and injuries was an issue for him to a degree.
Yeah.
Concussions.
But
they
he's
also
been
got
healthy the last couple of years, for sure.
Does it also sound like Tuck's going to free agency as well? That would be a blow.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to look up Buffalo around because I got Puckpedia up, so I'm looking at these different teams. By the way, New Jersey, Hamilton's under contract for 2 more years. So, I mean, they do have him. He's 33, but really their young defensemen right now are Luke Hughes. That's it. Most of the defensemen are in their late 20s or in their 30s, unless they have, this is the NHL roster, and they may have some guys in the minors. So it is interesting that they decided to move on from Nemitz, who I thought that they were pretty happy with how his game was coming along. All right, so Buffalo. So currently Buffalo is $21 million in cap space. So they could, because they moved Byram's contract, they could theoretically go out and acquire someone, and they could theoretically re-sign Tuck.
Yeah.
But maybe they feel that that's not in their best interest. I don't know. I think he also is a terrific player. I'm looking up his so his previous cap hit was 4.75. He's 30 years old. He would get a raise, but the Sabres have the room to keep him. So maybe it's him. I don't know.
So Chris, along those lines, he has 2 parts here. He says, there's a reason top 5 picks are not traded, with the last one happening 18 years ago. To trade one for Byram is crazy, in addition to the number 45 pick. He also says, insiders last night said the Byram trade does not impact the Tuck re-signing. Buffalo not moving off current offer.
So Buffalo's made an offer. Tuck is not happy, and it may just be this is the line in the sand.
This is it.
Jarmo Kekalainen he knows what he's doing, clearly. Yeah. Since he took over, they've made some really savvy moves. Even though he inherited the team, I still think that, they were very active at the deadline. I loved the Sam Carrick signing, even though he was hurt for a lot of the playoffs. Anyway, that may be the reason that Tuck is going to go to market. I respectfully disagree. I think you can go back and look at usually not the number 1 overall pick, but we just talked about Nemitz. He was the number 2 overall pick. The Devils traded him. Not every top 5 pick is going to turn out to be a generational player, or that's maybe too strong of a word, but a player who spends most of his career, if not his whole career, with the team that drafted him and making a huge impact. You can go back and look, and it's been the number 3 pick that's been weird. A lot of times the 3rd overall pick in a draft, that player has not really lived up to the expectations that come with being the 3rd overall pick. You can go down the years.
Puljujärvi? Was he a 3rd overall pick? Jesse
I think he was 4th, actually.
Was he 4th?
Yeah, it was Pierre-Luc Dubois went 3rd.
Yeah.
And he's had an okay career, but how often has he moved around? Yeah. Jarmo Kekalainen. Not Kekalainen. Kokiniemi was a 3rd overall pick.
Yeah, didn't even play really in the playoffs.
Right. Yeah. The year that Crosby went 1 and Bobby Ryan went 2, the guy who went 3rd overall was Cam Barker.
Chicago?
Yeah, but he had an NHL career, but not at the level of the other 2 guys.
Overall. Yeah.
So, Chris, I understand what you're saying. I don't know the draft well enough. I know that Gavin McKenna is presumably going to Toronto. There's some other really well-heralded players in that mix, but there's still an element of uncertainty. I guess there always is. I mean, Bo Byram could get injured again next year.
Sure.
And, he had injury problems earlier in his career, but I don't know. I don't hate the deal as much for Chicago. They've had high draft picks.
I think that's the other thing.
You're
what have
adding.
you done with
So
them?
let's say you get a guy who you'd like, we're going to add this guy right away. He's going to come in as an 18-year-old. You've got a very young team. Maybe they need somebody who's in his mid-20s, who's got a little cachet, some experience, won a cup with Colorado. Maybe I'm in the minority on it. I mean, I don't mind the deal from Buffalo's standpoint either, particularly if they felt that they were going to lose Byram a year from now. So they got something for him, and they're in a different boat. They could really use a 4th overall pick to maybe nurture, let him, let him build his game up, and then come in and really help their existing group.
You can't be prisoner of the moment. It's going to be tough for them to lose Tuck and Byram coming off the playoff position they were in.
Tuck scored more than 30 goals the last 2 years.
He was dynamic. Dynamic. I get that. I certainly
and he's
Ethan
30.
says, Ethan says, appreciate how measured Dave is in his analysis, but this team, as currently constructed, needs some help to continue to compete in this division and just not around the fringes.
Well, look, that's an opinion that the fan has, and I have no basis to say you're wrong. I mean, we're going to have to see how it plays out. The only thing I will point out, the Lightning did very, very well last year. And I think they did reasonably well in a tough playoff series. They didn't score enough, but they defended well against Montreal. They lost.
That is correct.
So, understood. But if we're going to look at the body of their work over 82 games, they had one of the best seasons of the 32 teams playing in the NHL. And they are bringing back most of the same team. They are not going to bring back Raddysh. Now we know that. And Bjorkstrand presumably is going to be not back, right, based on the way the wind is blowing. But, we'll see who the Lightning are able to add. And adding may come from within. As we said, if we did the show a year ago today, and we were looking at the Lightning's roster heading into the upcoming season, meaning last year, who knew about Charles-Edouard Destoux? Who knew about Dominic James? Neither player was in the organization at that point. I don't think they'd signed Destoux yet.
Yeah.
Maybe they had. But, that was a
Lightning
signing. It's like
had an
people
idea.
were like, this guy's going to the minors, right?
Yeah, right.
So we don't know how the team is going to be constructed, yes. The fan may be right. The fan is saying they need to do more as it's currently constructed. If you look at the players who are under contract, he feels that they need more. The fan may be right. But I am just pushing back on this notion that if we look at what the team did last year, they had a heck of a year. And, there's some question marks. Is Victor Hedman going to return at the level that we've seen from him, or is he going to come back and struggle?
Don't know.
So that's an unknown.
Yeah.
But if he looks more like the Hedman from 2 years ago and not last year, like he wasn't really a part of last year's team in terms of helping them accomplish the things that they accomplished. Another question for me is, will Ryan McDonagh be able to maintain, we'll just call it the very high level? He didn't have as dominant a year defensively last year as he did 2 years ago when he led the NHL in plus minus, and he's a year older. I thought he had an outstanding playoff, though.
He was very good.
He was very, very good in the playoffs. And, didn't play badly during the regular season. So, let's see if he's able to produce the same level of terrific defensive hockey.
The Lightning present the 9th annual Bolts Brew Fest, presented by Publix on Saturday, July 25th at Benchmark International Arena. The event features craft beers from local breweries, liquor distilleries, oversized games, and more. For tickets, go to boltsbrewfest.com. Frosty says, Connor McDavid spoke highly of Tampa, too, the last time we played them, so hopefully that the dreams turns into reality.
So is Michael suggesting that the Lightning trade for him or wait for him to play out his contract and then
so
get
Michael
him a few years
earlier,
from now?
That was actually a back and forth on our chat here. No, Michael He says Connor McDavid will get traded next offseason, if not this offseason. He has a full new move clause and controls where he walks in 2 years. Lightning need to be ready for that possibility. Of course, they bring in Mike Babcock as well, which had some controversy. Apparently, he was headed to Columbus.
Well, a couple of years ago he was.
And
that blew up.
It blew up in his face and said everybody wasn't on the same page, and now he's with Edmonton. And a lot of people talking about Mike Babcock and where he is and should he be given this opportunity, and the Oilers felt like it was needed.
Yes. And it's curious if they consulted some of their top guys about the move, and if they did the top guys, if they did, I assume the top guys signed off on it, which might mean that Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl were on board with this. I don't know. You don't have to consult the top players about it, but when you have two of the best players in the world, one of whom is, let's just say, nearing the end of a contract, it would seem logical that maybe they consulted with their top guys and
I don't know
the kind of the temperature in the pool.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can be a team who's not Edmonton to position yourself potentially for something that may or may not happen with Connor McDavid. In other words, have the cap space available just in case he gets to a point where he's not going to resign with Edmonton.
And, you can just affect that by having a great season, too. The fan had this offseason. I'm not sure that's going to happen this offseason, but let's just say a year from now. What if the Oilers win the Cup next year? Do you think Connor McDavid would be like, trade me? We just won the Cup. Trade me. We don't know. We don't know where things are going to be a year from now.
Yeah.
But yes, if you know you're going to lose the player, it is better to move that player and get assets.
Yeah,
unless you're just like, we want this player to play really well for us to the end of the contract.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Our good friend Jim from Jacksonville says, congratulations to Carey Price and Pekka Rinne on the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Your thoughts, and were you surprised?
And Bergeron got in too.
Yeah.
I believe. Yeah, Patrice Bergeron.
Yes. He asks, and Tkachuk, speaking of Tkachuk, the dad made
Keith
it.
Tkachuk. And Brian Burke is a builder.
Yep. Your thoughts, and were you surprised they both made it in their first year of eligibility? Can I just, before you answer that question?
Yeah.
My initial reaction when I saw that class, I was underwhelmed. And I don't know. You and I actually have talked about Patrice Bergeron. I actually think he is a Hall of Famer. But I'm wondering, are we entering, and this is probably for all of the leagues, the Hall of Very Good? Nobody stood out in that. And I know it felt like Carey Price's pedigree outweighed his performance in many instances. Not to take anything away from him, when he was healthy, was a very good goaltender. Some would say he was considered the best in the game when he was healthy and playing at a high level. I never looked at Pekka Rinne as a Hall of Famer. I always looked at him as a really good goaltender. Tkachuk, I think he had do you have over 500 goals? That usually helps.
Yeah. The question is, why didn't he get in earlier?
Yeah, power forward.
He was kind of like the Andrechuk story, where he had longevity and long extended productivity rather than, let's just say, a 7 to 8 year span where he was completely dominant and maybe, one of the top 2 or 3 players in the NHL.
Maybe I can meet you halfway with a couple of those players. It didn't overwhelm me. What did you make of everybody down that list?
Well, if I'm being honest, Greg, I haven't given it much thought. But,
there we go.
I felt Bergeron would get into the Hall of Fame.
I did too.
He got it in the first crack, and I can't say I'm surprised, because of the players you mentioned or that we talked about, he has the strongest case. Carey Price won Vezina trophies, and he actually won the Hart Trophy one year. But Bergeron has a cup. Bergeron has a bunch of Selke trophies. Bergeron was considered one of the best players of his era, not as a 100-point guy, but just he for sure was considered one of the best players, as was Carey Price. but Bergeron won the cup, right? And Bergeron went deeper in the playoffs several times as opposed to Carey Price, who I guess, he got to a final his last year, whatever it was, when the Lightning beat Montreal. But that was a little bit of an outlier year. So, I mean, I guess of the names mentioned, Bergeron is the least surprising to me. Of the two goalies, I agree with you. I think Price probably is a stronger case than Rinne. But
I
don't get a vote on that. So
it's our
and
opinion.
I don't know who else was in the running.
I don't either, but I didn't feel like that was the strongest class.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that many got in, maybe that's surprising. But then again, I don't know. It's more of just an interesting observation based off of Jim's question there. Ethan, lastly, we can end on this. Tampa Bay was great last year, and they are still very good. I just think with $13 million of cap room, aging core with injury concerns, a division full of improving teams, Julian can't bank on past success alone. I mean, that's assuming he does. I don't think we believe that.
Look, Ethan, that's a very fair comment, and I didn't mean to suggest that you were wrong to say that, the Lightning, basically you said the Lightning can't stand pat. And I'm not saying you're wrong. You may be right. Julian may be active. We'll see. I mean, he's done a very good job as general manager, not just in terms of the moves that he's made, but some of the moves that he hasn't made. In terms of I like the way our team is constructed in this area. So the aging defense core, and really we're talking about McDonough and Hedman, because those are the two defensemen that are truly aging. When you're into your mid to late 30s, McDonough has continued to play at a high level. So, I mean, on some level, you have to keep assuming that he's going to play at that high level, because if he drops off, I mean, you kind of had Moser last year fill in, and maybe that's going to be a slow transition, but that's the role that McDonough has filled, and that is the role that you were counting on him to continue to fulfill. And that's why Julian gave him a 3-year extension, because he feels confident that he can do it. Okay. There are way more questions heading into this season with Victor, just based on what happened last year. So do you need to have some insurance against that in case Hedman's not able to regain his form? Yep. Well, I mean, the Lightning had a very solid defense core last year. Very solid. Crozier.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Carlisle, Moser, Chernak, Destu. I mean, you can go down the list.
Yeah.
So none of those players was Victor Hedman in terms of the pedigree of a Hedman, but they did the job. So, we're going to find out more, Ethan. Maybe we need to find out more by next week when we're on literally in the first day of free agency.
Yeah.
But as we get into the summer, we'll get an idea of what moves the Lightning are looking to make and how active they are. And then if they are less active, is that because players that they wanted went elsewhere, or they just decided to pass and they are focused more on players within their organization? We'll see. I know that's not a very satisfying answer at this point. And his point about the division getting better, look, it's hard to argue with that. I don't think Montreal is going anywhere. I don't think Buffalo is going anywhere. Florida should be better. You would figure Toronto will be better, right? Ottawa was a playoff team last year. And then even without Brady Tkachuk, they still have some excellent young players. Sanderson's one of the best defensemen in the NHL,
He's a good player.
opinion.
Yeah.
Terrific player. Yeah. They still
The good
have
news
Patterson, they still have Stützle. They are a good team. So Ethan's point is very fair and accurate. But you can't worry about what other teams are doing. You have to build your team. And I think that's the focus that Julian has had. So we'll see what he's able to do here in the next few weeks. Usually by mid to late July, things have settled, right? So we're going to get more answers probably in the next 3 to 4 weeks, Greg.
And we're going to be on the air next Wednesday.
Yes, we will.
So we will be talking about anything that is happening. So a lot of stuff happened since we were last on the air, and we were happy to talk about it with our audience today. Part of a great job. As always, we'll do it again next week, noon to 1. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks to Steve Ersick for producing. I am Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch right here on Lightning Radio.